with Team Liquid. How bad is it? I think we got the answer here. It's effectively a dead team, and what they did at the major here was simply unacceptable.
There's other teams out there who can overtake them.
No, I'm actually going to disagree with you on this one. Here's why. Right, we're back here at Counterpoints, and I'm actually going to just lead with a really quick ad read, which is because it's our own thing we're advertising. What we've done at LFN is we've used one of our artists who does a lot of our overlays, and we've made kind of a cool abstract t-shirt for the Cologne Major to commemorate it, where, without going too far here, because I'm not actually even sure what I'm supposed to say in this regard, but let's just say, obviously, we haven't got licensing rights to all the teams, so what the artist has done, essentially, I won't say which the teams are so you can guess, is he's taken like the logos of, let's say, the contender teams, and he's used those, because a lot of them are animals, he's used those animals in a cool way in this piece of art to make the t-shirt. So one, it's actually quite a cool idea anyway, also because you don't have to have people go like, is that some esports thing? It's just a cool image with a bunch of animals doing some stuff, and the artist is just good. So this limited edition t-shirt, obviously we won't be keeping this running very long, is a bunch of the teams that are potentially in the mix to win the IM Cologne Major. We ship to as many countries worldwide as we can. Pricing and shipping information is available at the shop website, which you can see on the screen, /freenation.shop. Fans in the US can actually get free shipping for purchases over $60, so check out the rest of our merch as well. And the t-shirt will be available through to the end of June, so if you want to get one, go ahead and order now, even though you've still got a little bit of time, assuming it doesn't sell out. So support your favourite shows on Last Free Nation directly by purchasing our limited edition Cologne 2026 Major Tee at www.lastfreenation.shop. Okay, obviously we're going to talk about the Major, Pimp. Stage 1 has just been finished. Many different angles we can go with. Where do you want to start? What's the first thing that's on top of your mind of the Major?
Well, I feel we can just, I guess refer back to the episode we did a couple of days ago with Team Liquid. How bad is it? I think we got the answer here. It's effectively a dead team, and what they did at the major here was simply unacceptable. It was wild to watch. It was wild to witness.
Bro, you know what's sick? Low key, I wasn't actually that mad because I didn't pick him in my pick'ems, mate. So the joke is, I actually just realised I've never been in this position before, because I'm a bit like you. I have a mild bias towards Liquid, especially when they have good names. I want them to succeed, So normally I would have been the guy sitting there on that match, like, oh please. But then because I didn't have them anyway, I was just watching like, let them die. I was like, I fucking got a Rocky or something. So, but I get it. Like, hasn't everyone given up on them now? I mean, what is there left to do? They've just failed.
It's just over, Yeah, it is, and it was just weird, It's funny to be at a tournament, and one thing is obviously sitting at home and watching a team play, and you can kind of sense something is off. But even from being at the tournament, looking at the body language, how the players came into the game, there was just something off, It felt like they didn't truly believe in themselves. Felt like they didn't truly believe that it was even possible to make it to stage 2, which is crazy. And I think, in all fairness, I think Liquid probably had the level to be part of stage 2. The thing is, I think what I sensed from that was that they realized that even if we win, even if we make it to stage 2, we're just going to embarrass ourselves at stage 2. We're just going to get absolute smacked by Astralis, by FUT, you name it, So what's the point even here? And that's kind of the feeling you were getting. The way they lost to FlyQuest as well was just abysmal. Take nothing away from FlyQuest, but I have them as an 0-3 pick in stage 2 here. I don't think they're too impressive, to be completely honest. So for Liquid to lose in that fashion, it's just, I think we can round it off now and say, okay, Liquid, as we know them, they're dead, And I was actually desk hosting the segment, and I had Ash and Dupree with me, I believe it was, and we kind of spoke about, okay, so Liquid, like, who do you even keep from that lineup? Like, is there even a core to build around, or do you just explode the entire thing and be like, fuck it, you're all kicked, Maybe EliGE gets to stay, maybe Malbz gets to stay, and that's it, So to me, that's, as you said, I think you posted it on Twitter as well. Probably the best thing that could happen to Liquid, them making stage 2 or them doing some sort of fluke run into stage 3 could potentially save one or two of the players that you normally would get rid of, right? But at this point, we all agree that just implode the entire thing and rebuild from the ground up.
No, I mean, first of all, I agree. Like, I actually think the way they played was pathetic. Like, if people don't know, one of the only reasons they even got to that 2-2 match against FlyQuest was because they beat Heroic even. By the way, normally, I wouldn't even favour them to beat Heroic. Heroic is actually a better team in the normal circuit than Liquid is. Like, if you put this in, if this was a random, like, PGL whatever, or a medium IM, I would take Heroic to win that game, mate. So actually, I already thought they mildly punched above their weight getting that win. And then, if you draw 2-2 game FlyQuest. Bro, I was saying this for FlyQuest, because by the way, I have FlyQuest 0-3, because if no one knows, FlyQuest didn't beat any teams that made it out of the stage. They just got bad, basically they got a good draw. The joke is, I was laughing that, think how bad this is, Pip. This is crazy, now I realise it when I say it like this. I was thinking FlyQuest got an easy draw getting Liquid on the last game. Like, mate, if you're Liquid, that's supposed to be a layup. FlyQuest is infamous, notorious for being the team where their only thing they can stake their claim on in modern majors is, lol, we don't come last. That's all they do, isn't it? That's why I always laugh, right? The reason why I've never found it that funny when they go, fuck yeah, pick'ems, is I always go, you're saying that to everyone though, bro. You're saying that to people who put you 0-3, because you usually don't go 0-3. But you're also in a way saying that to your fans, because I assume they put you going through and then you never fucking go through, do you? So like, all FlyQuest does is not come last usually, right? At least in stage 1. So, but here's why it's crazy, because you go and look, even when I look now, Pimp, I look at the lineup of Team Liquid and I'm like, this can't be a stage 1 failure team. Again, that's why the weird thing is, it is hard to figure out who to keep. Because if I go on name value, I only change 1 or 2 pieces. But if I go on how they've actually played in Team Liquid, I'm with you. Look, I would never start all the way over again, because 2 reasons why. 1, you spent money making this roster. You got EliGE back. Who knows if you were the one who paid the money for that? You got Malbz. I'm sure these things all cost money, I've no doubt. You probably have spent a lot on salary as well, so you don't want to throw that all away immediately, And also, I'll just throw this out there, because I saw people doing it, Pim. One of the reasons Americans cannot be helped, they are their own worst enemy, is it's one thing... I actually like that finally, NA fans aren't just like blindly supporting Liquid and be like, no, it's fine, just let them play again. But I saw a lot of them, bro, doing this take, which just kills me, where they just go, kick them all and start over with young NA players who are rising talents. And I want to just go, who? No, like, the giveaways, you didn't say a name there, mate. Like, that means you don't know who they are. And don't tell me, like, they must be out. They aren't. As far as I know, they play Valorant or they don't exist. They play other esports games. And also, and by the way, that's not even a terrible idea, except that's not the idea you do instead of this roster. That's an idea where what you should say is a bit like FaZe. You should go, make an NA academy. Now, that's not a bad idea. Do that separately. And then the point is, that could in 3 years from now yield a player that could play at this level that's cheap. Yeah, that's good. But you do that and this roster, because like I said on Twitter, bro, which player that you've never heard of in NA is by the next major going to be as good as EliGE and fucking Malbz and people like that? There's nobody. Don't be silly. And in fact, another reason which ties onto that is why you don't kick this whole roster is because, bro, if you do kick this whole roster, then my joke of my mate JT just gets them all in Passion UA and he'll beat you at the next major with them, because the joke is I think he should even be in Team Liquid at this point in time. So, like, I do think that's one reason why you can't go overboard with it. Like, you've got to, I agree with you. You probably picked, those are the 2 I would pick, by the way. I would just pick Malbz and EliGE. They seem like the 2 pieces that at least have the potential. I don't even hate the idea of keeping Nath, depending on what the money is and what the situation is in that regard. He seems, luckily for him, he doesn't seem like a player that takes a lot of resources, and he seems like he's also got a good attitude, doesn't he? So, but the others, I'm sorry, I kick every other one. Like, one thing I'm really glad about, bro, I was just looking this up while we were talking now, is I'm actually really fucking glad that Ultimate was shit at this major, because sadly, if people don't know, he was quite bad at the last one too. But actually, before that, one of the few things he had going for him in his career is actually usually at the majors, he'd have like the odd map that was good, and it made his numbers not bad. So I think actually, like we were talking about the idea of like, it's good that they got fucking kicked here. Basically, this is what I said to everyone should have happened to FaZe last major. If FaZe had actually failed in stage 1 like that in last major, Carrigan would probably still be playing there. They'd probably changed the roster. Maybe they would have some sick AWP. Maybe we'd be talking about FaZe as like a dark horse to win the major. Instead, that project has collapsed and nobody even knows what the future is. And now Carrigan's in Falcons. So I also do think surely this is the end for Ultimate. Like, this has got to be it where he's gone. I mean, people even make that joke of like, he's going down a rifle. They get him off the fucking AWP. Like, well, stop saying that. Stop saying that. Like, that redeems him on the AWP. It doesn't. Like, AWP is a fucking really important role. So one of the problems I think they have is this, though, Pimp. Right? I always say there's certain key roles you need in the game. Bro, they literally need primary AWPer, probably IGL, and maybe even coach. Like, mate, you are, even though we're keeping a couple of players, you've got your that is everything. You almost are making a new team at that point in time, just with Malbz and EliGE or whatever you mean. You know, like, that's going to be a hard recruitment, especially because, like, I actually tried to be reasonable when I said things like pick up JT and try and, but when I say that, on TC or whatever, when I say that, I actually get why that isn't that sexy to fans, though, because those aren't really like Liquid names, are they? Liquid's supposed to get big names that could be really good. The problem I have is this, the last thing I'll say on the Liquid one is, mate, I'll tell you what really scares me right now is At least until this year. Last year, I do believe that if actually FaZe had have gone to a good player and said to them, like, do you want to come to join FaZe? I think there's a lot of good players would. I get the vibe it's the opposite with Liquid. Like, I do get the vibe Liquid has that thing where it's like, put it this way, I use the old football analogy again. You know, one of the few things that allowed Manchester United to become good again is, bizarrely, actually the sheen of it's Manchester United never wore off Pimp, even towards the end. Like, mate, I can tell you, if people don't know, like Bumayo guy, there was rumours he was going to join Liverpool before last season, but he chose Man United. Mate, Liverpool won the fucking Premier League and he chose Man United because Man United still has, like, appeal. I think FaZe still had that. Liquid doesn't have that, I can tell you right now. Joining Liquid right now as a big team would be like joining Tottenham Hotspurs. Like, if you do that, you know you are in for a hard fucking time to turn it around, no matter how much money they've got. So sadly, the dumbest thing is, I know they've got money, Pimp. I know they could still probably pay, like, a good player. Like, I'm talking like a 25k a month salary, and, you know, everyone knows they've got fabulous facilities and they'll fly you business class. So in theory, there's a lot of reasons to join, but the problem is, how the fuck do you join this project and not feel like you're going to have to experience what people like Nerds just did and have your whole career tank? So I also do think, like, I don't know how you get out of this, because if you want big names, you don't want to do like I do, like that budget gamble of JT and try and see. If you want to go big names, you're probably going to need to sign an amazing name that just for some reason believes before the others even join, or some, like, I don't even know who this would be, some amazing coach that can draw people. Like, so the other issue I have is actually even on the high end, I can name you players, but would they join this team? I don't know.
No, me neither. And that's the interesting thing, you know, in terms of how Liquid is gonna rebuild. Because normally you'd keep 3 players to have the core for the VIS, et cetera. But they've fallen so far out now that for EWC, you know, which is, I know for a fact for Liquid, right?
Oh, it's massive.
That whole club, it's massive to not even have a Counter-Strike team.
As far as I know, last year, it might even have been the first 2 years, they came like second in that fucking club thing, mate. So I can tell you they got millions of dollars for that. So yeah, it's a big deal to be in the tournament.
It is a big deal, but it also does offer the opportunity that we're kind of describing now, that you've fallen so far out of VIS that you may as well just cut the entire thing now, you know.
Yeah, that's
keep
true.
Malbz, keep EliGE, you know, and then build up from the ground up. But we've seen that, you know, from a lot of different teams. It's tough to grind VIS, and it's tough to get ready to be part of the second major of the year, even for Team Liquid, if they were to do that. And I also very much buy into your point about, you know, what's the attraction to joining Team Liquid as of right now. I'll be completely honest, and I don't know why. I've always liked Shuhei. I feel like he's
same.
I thought he was good, you know. I thought to myself that he's going to figure it out. He's going to turn it around. But at this point, when you look at his time in Team Liquid, like he's not done anything. Like, he's not made anyone a better player. He's not made the team any better at any point. And I don't know if it's Liquid, if it's the environment, if it's the players he's had to work with. But I think he's had enough different iterations of Team Liquid to somehow, some way make it work, you know, just a little bit, or at least show glimpses of it. And he's not managed to. And I'm not saying Shuhei couldn't join another decent team and be a great in-game leader, but he's just not cut for Liquid and in that environment. And then I got to say it as well, you know, it's super tough to judge coaches from the outside, but Flashy, as far as I'm aware, and this may sound a bit rough, you know, all he is to me for now is Blade's assistant. Like, I haven't seen his impact within Team Liquid whatsoever. Again, it may be the environment, it may be unfortunate for him that he decided to join Team Liquid, which is never really going to work out. You know, again, you probably only know if you're part of the inner circle of that. But from the outside, all he's achieved is being Blade's assistant at this point. He's not made them better at any point. He's not made them competitive. He's not done or said anything that makes me believe that he's the right coach, right? And that brings me back to the whole point with, you know, if you want to recruit good players, one thing that recruit players and one thing that makes a player think, okay, if I join this team, we can become great. That's if you have a coach you believe in, if you have a Blade, or if you have a Sonic, or if you have one of those coaches where you feel like, okay, or Store for that matter as well in G2, you're like, okay, if I get to play under him, I can develop as a player. If I develop as a player, this team is going to be great. But Liquid have none of that. They don't have the in-game leader. They don't have the coach. And I think that's the biggest problem, because I agree, you could keep Neff for all I care. I think Neff is doing a decent job and he's not going to cause any issues, and he can most definitely be your 4th best player on a top 10 team in the world. He can most definitely be a player that is making major playoffs, you know, where he doesn't have to be the star. But there's nothing else that's attractive by joining Team Liquid right now. So I'm with you. I'm really, really curious to see how they're going to do it. I don't hope they're going to go the NA route and try to sign young NA players and basically stop investing into Counter-Strike, because as you said, they have money. But I'm also, you know, from a Liquid perspective, why do you keep investing so much money into the Counter-Strike division if you get nothing out of it, not even qualifying for EWC, which is where you generate all your income? So I get it. It's going to be interesting to see how Liquid is going to bounce off what was an expected but still terrible major campaign for them.
I'll even throw it out there as well. Another reason I'm quite concerned for them is if you actually look at their history, I think coaching is one of the weakest positions they've had, bro. Like the whole reason, even though I can tell you he definitely won't be coming back now, that they had to give my boy, who used to be my boy at least when he was fucking the same person, the reason they gave Zeus that try again at the beginning of CS2 is he's one of the only big name coaches that they actually ever be able to have in their org. Think about it. Aside from that, their coaches were like Peacemaker on his like 1 million team tour of fucking Counter-Strike that he did for a few years. You know, there was like, but Richard once looked it up on by the numbers. There was like a 3-year span, bro, Pimp, when he was in like 18 teams or something mental. So it's like, what? So there's that one. And that was also really early in coaching. I guess they had a Dren when they won all the fucking shit in 2019. But on that one, I'm sorry, I've always looked at that as more of like, he used to be in your team. So it was more like, you know, one of the players just stood behind you.
That wasn't
I'm sorry,
history, no.
if you ever look at that roster as well, that was a roster that just fucking played the game, mate. There was massive egos, but it just worked. Because they won, they didn't have the arguments. So I never looked at him as a top coach. The Daps one was an interesting try. If people don't know, he's now coaching at NRG. That wasn't bad. Unfortunately, his period was cursed with the one where they picked up like Rainwaker and Patsy in that like weird angle where it's like, well, what do you know, when they took their first gamble into like cheaper, smaller names, and then you think more modern day, it's like, who've they got? So unfortunately, they're also not a team in that regard who have like the pedigree that they know how to get a coach or who to bring in or something like that. So, and then lastly, coaches are sort of thin on the ground, aren't they? Like another problem you have with coaches as well is you can go to a European team who's doing well, and maybe it's because like he literally, you know, came up with those players. Like I'll give you an example. Right now, the coach you'd sign actually is probably like Coolio or something from FUT, right? But for all I know, that's just that specific group that he works with. I have no idea if he'd work in Team Liquid. I have no idea what he'd do with EliGE or for someone like Naf. These are veteran players, you know, who played a long time. And lastly, I do agree on the Shuhei point. What's sad is I'm not even against Shuhei. I sort of low-key pull for him because I do think what he showed us on the com-op, a bit like Kixan, isn't worth just throwing away immediately because a big project didn't work out. And I do think of this as like football, where like, I'll give you an example. So obviously the team I support, Liverpool, just fired Arne Slot. Mate, I can totally see why he didn't work at Liverpool at the end. But I'll tell you what, there's a bunch of teams out there probably should consider this guy. Like if you think of the first season, he had some interesting tactical elements. Like he maybe just seemed like he had the wrong temperament for the team, you know, maybe he needs a smaller team. Who knows what it is? So I think there are many options. The problem is, I mean, we're in the position those fans are. I think it's really hard to suggest any names though, mate. Like this is one where I've got to just say, I'm sorry. For once, Team Liquid, you know what? I'm not going to be nosy. You figure it out yourself, mate. You figure out what the fuck you're going to do with this team, because I also will say this. I don't know how you got in a situation. And lastly, the last thing to say on Liquid as well as this. The harshest thing is, aside from the flashy signing, bro, and I also, personally, I've never been an Ultimate fan, so I would have cut him like years ago. Aside from those two aspects, I also just feel sorry for them, because I think a lot of us agree, who are experts. If you look the last couple of years, it's actually really bizarre, because some of these names do look really fucking good when they're on the way in, mate. They look like that's the signing. Like, remember, like, do you think about when they got people like Shoot here? That sounded like it was going to be banging, mate. That sounded like that was the move right there. You think of Nertz. Oh, mate, when Nertz joined, he looked like he was going to turn the whole franchise around. He was a top fucking talent. Like, these are good signings. I'm sorry. Even in hindsight, I don't blame you for trying those signings, even though they didn't work. All right. No, by the way, Liquid's just depressing. Who do we talk about next? Yep. Who's next?
That's a good question. I feel we can. I would actually bring this to the level of discussion. You know, the level we saw in stage one. I always like to look at the majors and then judge it by a whole. And I gotta be saying, right. I know there's a lot of stake. I know there's a lot of emotions going on. I know the pressure is high, but that's the major. If you want to be good at the major, you gotta be able to handle that. I think I saw too many games where I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what are these two teams doing right now? And I guess one of the best examples is the one yesterday between Big and NRG. Thank God for the Pick'ems, and thank God for that. A bit of major magic. Entertainment value, obviously 10 out of 10, but the level of Counter-Strike I saw in that game, what LinVision pulled off as well. LinVision played Tai Lu in the 2-2 game, a best of 3 game, and I was watching that game thinking to myself, how the fuck did LinVision ever win 2 maps at this? Like, it didn't make any sense. And I had to I'm like, how did you lose to this team? Even if it's a best of one, it doesn't make any sense. Yes. So I think normally you have a stage one at a major, as it's been the last couple of times where we have these 3 different stages where there's 32 teams at the major. We kind of expanded it. I think there's always a couple of teams where you're like, okay, you weren't cut for it. Or maybe this is where, it would have been nice if there weren't, 32 teams, but 28 somehow, some way. But that's okay. Somebody got to be the worst team at the tournament. But I do feel this time around, I could point maybe 5, 6 maybe even 7 teams, FlyQuest, who made it through, congratulations, but I don't think they played good Counter-Strike up until the point where they made a fool out of Team Liquid. I think there was too many teams coming into this major not playing well enough, not looking like a team. They were like, okay, this is where we're supposed to peak. This is where we put all our eggs in the basket. This is where we boot camp. This is where we come in as fresh as we can and as sharp as we can. And I think that was a little bit disappointing, which is also why my pick'ems, if you look at them at stage 2, I have pretty much all the teams coming in at stage 2 to make it through, because I was not really impressed by anyone in stage 1. Same for GamerLegion, the one team together with BetBoom, two of the teams where you're like, okay, these 2 teams in stage 1, they should be dominating, they should be owning. BetBoom was the only team who lived up to it, I feel like, and they were doing a good job. GamerLegion looked like a shadow of themselves. They lost the first best of 1 today against Astralis in a pretty bad way as well. So it's just not been... The level of Counter-Strike and the quality of Counter-Strike has been a little disappointing to me overall. And let's not, even talk about Gaimin Gladiators. I had my little rant about them in our last episode, but I think it's a disgrace that they show up with that lineup and play the way they do. I think I said it last time around, I hate the fact that they signed FUT. I hate the fact that they are okay with a player saying, well, I'm too old to practice and I'm just here to play the major and then I'm dipping out again, I have nothing against FUT for saying yes to that. By all means, you get gifted that opportunity, you do it, you go play another major. Whoever the idiot thought that was a good idea to waste a major spot by bringing in FUT to play his first tier 2 game ever, to bring him in and play the 3rd HLTV game since 2022. You bring him into a major at IM Cologne. Fucking ridiculous. Like, who was the idiot who decided to do that? That's doing the major a disjustice, and I'm not cool with that. So overall, not really satisfied with the level of Counter-Strike in stage 1. I think entertainment-wise, it was fun. There are a lot of cool games, and the big comeback yesterday obviously is rounding it off in a nice way, but I was hoping for more, I think Counter-Strike is at a point now, Duncan, where, and I don't know if you agree, where the level of competition is probably higher than it's ever been. We speak about, being a top 25 team in the world is tough these days because there's so many good teams. Well, we didn't really get to see that in stage 1.
No, that's also a downside, unfortunately. One thing I can tell you they're never going to change, and I sort of get it, is they're just committed, you can tell, Valve, to this idea that you've got to have, regional slots because... look, without making it political, that's what the whole world's been for the last 20 plus years, but it's all diversity. So you have to represent every single type of person and every single type of place. And one of the things within that, which again, without making it political, but it just inherently is, I didn't do this to the world. The world for thousands of years was the way Thorin thought it is, which is, I actually care about things like how good the fucking team is, not where they're from. And the problem is, you notice the philosophy that informs the world and now makes major qualification have to be like that is, you can't assume because someone's from a region that they're not as good, even though we all know if you were betting or if I had a gun to your head and said to save your life you have to pick the team that wins here, you would be very cynical, and you'd be right to be cynical in most cases. I won't say in life, we'll keep that political shout of it, let's just say in Counter-Strike though, because one of the worst things about watching this stage 1 Pimp was when I'm watching the teams, because notice the 2 teams you picked there are teams who benefit from the fact that their region gets slots and they're not European, so they essentially don't compete against, we all laugh at FaZe. This is why I'm so sick of this narrative. I'll tell you a worse narrative that without an RMR is this narrative of lol, look at you, FaZe, you failed to make the major. Right, by what definition do I congratulate Linvision for how they made the major, but tell FaZe their failures? FaZe actually played real teams, mate, and were in position to maybe make it. Linvision, as we saw, it's even implied they might have just actually, behind the scenes, secretly rigged that. They were winning walkover games to make the major, mate. Or when they did play, they were just playing and beating people you don't know from China and then losing to Tai Lu. No one gives a shit about that. That is nothing. So here's my problem. Or Gaimin Gladiators, again, when you say that, who decided to bring it in? That's what happens, mate, when someone's given something that they didn't earn. If I give, that's like you went and gave Gaimin Gladiators, hey guys, 5 free tickets to the major, you want to come? Bring a friend if you haven't got someone. Mate, their teams in Europe are killing themselves to get to this major, and they're just turning up lol, to have some appeal, let's just bring FUT, who, by the way, the joke is still better than most of their players. That's how fucking bad they are. The real team, he was as good. You would have never known he was to stand in, mate. He was top fragging some of the games even, so, no, it's pathetic. And my problem is, when I watch that tournament, and as I have the same opinion, mate, if you're those teams from those smaller regions, especially in light of what I just said, you better fucking play that this is your life on the line. Because you need to actually justify that qualification system and show that, no, this is right. You give these teams a chance and you can make use of it, Instead, when I saw them play, the first thing I was thinking was, I looked it up right now on the HLTV, I looked on the rankings now. Right, mate, as of today, I would have rather seen any of these teams instead of them. FaZe Clan, You know what? You might not think FaZe is good. They're way better than these teams. 3D Max and eat these teams for dinner, mate. NIP. Now, sadly, these are all European teams, so I know why they didn't qualify. So I'll tell you one thing. I've said it a million times, but I won't make it a big thing because I just don't think it'll ever happen. I just wish we could go back to, you do have slots, but those are slots to go to a qualifier before the major. That's what I would do. Essentially, I told people this before. I would just turn stage 1, I would rename it to the qualifier. Everyone gets into it like this, and then when they don't get through, here's the best part, Pimp. LinVision doesn't get to go, hey, Twists, you bum. You didn't make the major. I did. It's like, you didn't make shit. You were just born Chinese, and Twist was born in Canada. You fucking bum. You didn't do anything. Gaimin Gladiators gets to make this major, but I have to tell Snappy, you're a failure, mate. I'm sorry. You should do like a fur and just not play CS and just get... What are we doing at this point in time? Imagine, by the way, I was about to actually make the mistake of saying, imagine if sports was like, if people don't know, the World Cup is like that. The World Cup is exactly like that. If people don't know, there are teams, there's always a good European or South American team doesn't make it because of their qualifier. And I won't say which region, but there are certain regions that you're just like, what the fuck is that? Why do you get to say you went to the World Cup? So whatever. We'll move past that. And the last thing I'll say is this as well. This is another reason why I hate what I just call like narratives that are more wishful than based on reality. So when we have those tournaments, Shanghai Major, Blast always has a second tournament that's in like the foreign IM has an IM in China every year now. When we do that, right, one of the problems is it's easy for me to criticize and say, well, one, that's bad viewership for me. I'm in the main viewership region. You're going to have worse viewership for this tournament, right? Also, it's actually, you could consider it a negative for teams to travel all that way. It's going to have an impact on the performance. What they're supposed to always sell me, Pimp, that makes that acceptable is they go, yes, but we're building up like viewership and the scene in China and Asia, even better when they say Asia. I've never understood, by the way, how an event in China helps a Mongolian guy get better at CS. I want to play the game. I'll never get that. To me, you're the racist, you fucking idiot. Why would a Mongolian guy go, someone Chinese? Basically me. I guess I'll just start playing CS. There's no connection, mate. So what I hate is this. We've done that for years now, mate. We've given them years of tournaments in China. We've fucking gone there. Right? After all of that, where are they all? It's still just Tyloo and fucking the Mongols. The Huns, they're nowhere to be seen, mate. Chinggis Warriors, who the fuck are they? LinVision, they are a joke. I hate LinVision. I despise watching them play. I don't even do the thing other people do. People try to make LinVision the little brother of Tyloo. And you know how it's easy, by the way, as an expert, to watch Jam Young in Tyloo and go, this guy's fucking cracked. Fair play, mate. Other way around from Twist, if you weren't born Chinese, you'd be really good. You could be like HLTV top 20 player. I actually feel bad for you. You're trapped over there. People try to do that to LinVision and go, now, Thorin, watch out. Zaka's pretty good. Tell you what, I only watch majors, so I don't fucking know that, mate. Maybe he is when he goes in some other tournament. I don't. By the way, his team's one of the ones where if they play PGL, I'm not watching that Swiss system game, mate. That's where I choose my sanity and to have a life than just watch every CS game. I always say I've watched every important CS game, Pimp. I don't watch those motherfuckers go 1-3 in a Swiss system. No chance. So also that's the other thing that's sad to me is we do it with the major. Another reason why stage 1 sucks, because here's the real problem, guys. The reason why I like VRS, but you all don't, is because VRS made stage 1 suck. Because VRS put all the bad teams into the group. And what you've realised is how many fucking bad teams sneak into majors. In the past, there'd have been something ludicrous, bro, where the old system would have actually put like one of these teams into like stage 2, while some European teams in stage 1. You know what I mean? You'd get to skip ahead, wouldn't you? Like, think about that America's one where you could win a BO1 and it could make you go like way further in the tournament. Like, that was absurd. So sadly, we also just haven't seen the development to make these teams good enough. And also, lastly, I agree with you. On the top end, even though they only lost one BO3, Pimp, the team that lost the most aura from stage 1 was fucking GamerLegion. Because remember, they were just in a final the other day. They were in the Atlanta final. They've actually been on the rise at Blast. They were like a semi-final. Mate, their form coming into this major, they looked overqualified to be a stage 1 team because all those results were after the cut-off where you couldn't use it to qualify anymore. So if you'd have asked fans based on recent form, fans would probably have put them like minimum stage 2, maybe even like bottom of stage 3 and say, hey, fuck it. Like, maybe you could even be a team that could be like a playoff South team here, the way they have played so far, I know form can change. Mate, I don't even personally have them getting out of stage 2. And here's what shocked me. I thought I was going to be edgy when I released my pick'em. I went and looked. Bro, loads of people agree with me. Even though they only lost that one series to BetBoom, the problem is, if people don't know, that isn't the BetBoom lineup. BetBoom basically did some old school shit where you got a better player, but not for the roles, and you're just going, fuck it, we're going to the LAN anyway. And the difference is, unlike Gaimin Gladiators, it's working for them. They're actually looking great, mate. They're just playing some good CS, people fragging out. I can't believe GamerLegion's sort of like, sure, it might turn around, but they're sort of thrown away all that goodwill, mate. I also had them as a team where it's like, maybe they can fuck around if they get the right draw. Maybe they can make the playoffs of the major. Right now, they'll be lucky to see stage 3.
Yeah, I agree. They have been. It sounds harsh to say, as you said, they only lost one best of one, but they've probably been one of the most disappointing teams so far at the major. Also, I guess us recording this right now, they just lost the best of one game against Astralis quite convincingly as well on Ancient. I was watching it, and they never even made it any close whatsoever.
By the way, there's another example. If you want to look at form, Astralis was on the downward swing coming into this major. Gaimin was on the up again. That's another match. You got to win that match, mate. If you keep losing these matches, no one's going to remember what you did last month. They'll be deleted from history.
100%. You know, that's one of those games where you feel like Astralis is prone to go 2-2. GamerLegion is prone to go 2-2 in a stage like this. And clearly, you know, one team is better than the other, at least in that game. So I agree. I think it's a little bit disappointing from GamerLegion. I don't even know what it is. You know, I think Yanko made a pretty good point, you know, and even did a longer tweet where he's like, GamerLegion sucks at playing as the favorite, you know, and I buy into that to some extent, that they perhaps, you know, it's new to them to be favorites. It's new to them to be good. It's new to them to have expectations on their back. I think Snax as an in-game leader, you know, a lot has been said and done about him. But to be completely honest, I think he works the best when he is the underdog, when there's no expectations to him, when he gets to call a game where it's a little bit more free-flowing, where he gets to gamble a little bit, you know, which is his style, you know, by hiding in smokes and doing random stuff from time to time. It's kind of like his jam and bread and butter. All of a sudden, you come into stage 1 where you said, like, he's overqualified almost to be there. And that's when it doesn't work out for them all of a sudden. So in that regard, it makes sense. I agree. You know, I think, I can't even remember. I think I put him to make it through because I do believe in best of 3 games. They should have enough to beat most of the teams in stage 2. But I'm also worried, you know, it's one of those where I'm like, I'm not sure, you know, I would have wanted to go for someone else. So yeah, they have probably, and it sounds harsh, you know, probably been the most disappointing team in stage 1 because we had so high expectations for them. The two games they won in best of 1 as well, I believe, were very close games against opponents where you're like, you should be smashing these guys, right? You should be owning them. And furthermore, you know, I think the most worrying point for me when it comes to GamerLegion is that if you want to make it to stage 3, right, you got to have your individuals and your star players playing well at the major. And PR looked like a shadow of himself. Shocking, had a terrible stage 1. Yeah, shocking. Like, normally, he's the guy you'd like, okay, he's the next one to be shipped away to a better team. There were rumors about G2 as well at a certain point to begin the year. Didn't manifest, didn't happen. One thing we pointed out as well, I think they spoke about it on the desk as well, but we noticed that his entry kill opening is very, very low, and his attempt rate is significantly lower than it's been as of late. You know, so is that a thing where you come into the major and all of a sudden you play a different way because you are afraid or you are not comfortable enough or you're not confident enough anymore? And that's the worst you can do as a player. If all of a sudden you start to change the way you play, not only do you as an individual perform worse off, but your teammates around you is like, what the fuck? Like, normally you would push this smoke, or normally you'd do this play, or normally you'd go for this duel. So how am I supposed to react to that now where you're doing something differently than you've never done in practice? You've never done it at officials, but you're doing it now that is at the major. So if I'm the coach of GamerLegion, and if I'm the teammates of GamerLegion, that's the first thing that I would assess ASAP. I tell PR, listen, we cannot always play at our best, but the last thing you can do is start to play in a different way. You got to go for the openings that you normally do. You got to play the way you normally do. You may have less success. You may not be in your best shape. You may have a bit of nerves. You may not have the same output as you normally do. But at the very least, it doesn't make the rest of us perform worse off because we then have to change our way of playing because you're not doing what you normally are. So I think that's something to look out for here in stage 2. Didn't have a great game against Astralis as a team. So so far they've been disappointing despite making it to stage 2.
I mean, the sad thing for me, I agree on the Snax point as well, by the way. It's why I always say I actually still think he's like a solid IGL. I think for this team, he's the right one. But I know what you mean. The problem is, he's one of those people. This might sound strange, but I think it's what we've all discovered from seeing like the world where it's not just you get invited to the tier 1 tournaments, but people have to now play tier 2 lands and sometimes tier 3 lands. What you discover when you see people go down in level is it's a different fucking game, mate. Like, the joke for Snax there is the kind of like ballsy gamble he would take and crazy push One doesn't work if the other team doesn't play proper Counter-Strike because the read you make isn't the correct read. Like the joke, it's like the old gag. They don't know what they're doing, so how can you know what they're doing to make a cool counter to it? And then secondly, also they're all doing that shit because they're all randy-ass tier 2 teams, so it also just isn't as effective. Like I agree. If you actually put GamerLegion the very next day after that result, where they were like, they just lost this BO1 against, say, like Legacy in a BO3, like a real team, they probably have an excellent game. They probably beat them. It would probably be like a great match. But I agree that they're actually going to have to sort of survive these early stages before they can get to that point. I'll tell you a team I'm going to pick out, Pimp, in this second stage, because hopefully this will come out today or tomorrow. So as a result, the stage will still be ongoing. It'll be relevant. I'll tell you the team I think is in a similar sort of GamerLegion type position. Not as extreme, because obviously the team that like actually is overqualified to be here is Spirit, isn't it? It's like, what are they doing here? But then you remember they only had the good results at the end when VRS has cut off. I don't worry about that, mate. I'm sorry. I don't care how bad it can go. There's no universe Spirit is going to fail this stage of the major with the talent they have with Donk. That can't happen. So the team I actually think is in trouble. I saw a lot of people up put them 3-0. I am really, really excited to see what is going to happen with G2 at this stage, mate. I think G2 is one of those teams where if you've watched the last few months, people forget this, Pim. They are so fucking lucky as G2 that everyone remembers at the end of the qualification period that you had people like FaZe go and fail, people like Liquid fail and have to change roster. Even Aurora went to that LAN where they tried to nick that stage 3 invite. They got it anyway in the end, and they just went. G2 went to one of those lands and was losing fucking tournament matches too, boys, at those, like, whatever, the Roman Imperium Cup type fucking Billy Bob, nobody. They were going to those lands too and having dodgy-ass games. And you think about them at Tier 1, they do this thing. We have a saying in English, right, which you'll probably have heard Richard use many times, which is called you flatter to deceive, where it's like you have like basically what it means in the context of the game is you look like you're good. You look like you're just about there, but the reason you deceive is you never get there. So you get blue balls, basically. Mate, this team was blue balls me with this core the whole time because they do have games where either they look good against a top team or they lose really closely. Like you've seen it, they take a vitality close. So, but then they can also go and they can play a team that's like 19th in the world and they can lose, or they can just be like in a really hard game where they're barely fighting for their lives. And then again, they have that Liquid thing where I look at the roster though, I'm like, this roster should be banging, mate. Like, this looks really good. But the problem you have is some of the names aren't playing at the level you hope they are. So I think they're a team where I know a lot of people will look at the name and go, G2 easy, straight through. I don't know, mate. That's one of those ones where you better do that. If you put a foot wrong, I could see this blown up. And lastly, I'll just say this. If you think about how their season's gone, this major's it for them, mates. They have had a really fucking poor season. They've done fuck all, really. That's impressive at all. Especially, by the way, in a world where people like FUT have gone and won little PGLs and made like deep runs of player. I think if you're G2, you have a lot of pressure on your shoulders.
I agree. They have a lot of pressure on their shoulders.
Did you pick them 3-0?
I picked them 3-0. I did it for two reasons. I do think they have the ability to go 3-0 first and foremost, but they're also, they're also one of those teams where it's like, I feel either they're going to come in here and they're going to be well prepared, they're going to do well, they're going to go 3-0, and it's going to be great. It's going to be interesting to follow them and bringing them back to life, because I agree with everything you said. The season as a whole and how the lead up to the major has been super disappointing. But they're also one of the teams I could see if they don't do that, if they don't get off to a good start or a strong start, maybe they don't even make it to stage 3. So in terms of like playing their whole pick'ems, tactical aspect of it, I picked them as a 3-0 because I think they can do it, but I'm not certain they're going to make it. So I didn't want to waste them a spot in that regard. What I will say though, that what makes me believe that G2 can still have a great major, still go to stage 3 and potentially also be a playoff team. I have a lot of trust and a lot of faith in Saw. I cannot see him, being the coach for that team for such a long period and bringing in a guy like Nerds as well, who he's worked with before as well, not do well. And I think that's why I'm sort of like putting my money that they found a way to, with a bit of time, implement Nerds into a point where he's going to find the impact that he's supposed to have. Because I agree, when he was signed to Liquid, first and foremost, I thought, okay, that is a marquee signing for Liquid. That is such a good signing. It's well spotted, great job of convincing him he's going to save your project. For some reason, it didn't work out, and I think that there's a point where it doesn't matter who Liquid would sign. Like, they could sign Saivu and they would find a way to fuck him up at that point. So I don't think that's on Nerds just yet. I want to see how he does in G2. Now he's had a bit of time. He's had time to be integrated, and there's probably no other coach that I would rather have him working with than Saw. And I do believe, that, as you said, when you look at the lineup and you look at the player material, they kind of give me the Liquid vibes, but they're still better, because they've still been closer to make the big results. As you said, coming close to beating Vitality in a best of 3 series, having a couple of tournaments where you're like, oh, you are a couple of rounds away from making a big result. Had you just done X, Y, and Z? So I think there's more hope still for G2. But I'm also fully on board with your assessment that if they don't do well here at the major, if they don't produce a good result, then first and foremost, I think Sun Payers is gone. I know he's had a bit of an uptick in form as of recently, but I also saw that they have this Klim guy who's playing pretty goddamn good so far.
People don't know
at the
that,
major.
bro. He's their academy player technically. Any moment they could
Exactly.
just bring him up. It's crazy. People don't know, because everyone wants the liquids of the world to get the clip. I'm just thinking, if I'm G2, mate, why don't we just make the hard decision? We're either committed that some players are going to be good, or this guy's just waiting right there. He looks like he could slot right in tomorrow, mate.
Yeah, he does, and that's the worst part, because I think they made a public statement during the major here that they're open to sell him. They're open to let him go, which to me seems like it seems like, okay, they're trusting in Sun Payers, but I don't think they can make that decision before after the major, because I do think that if they bomb out here at the major and Sun Payers is not playing well, I think he has to go, even though he's had an uptick in performance as of late. But that's also part of what I'm feeling with G2. I think they're one of those teams with Hunter being the experienced in-game leader as well. I say experienced player, not as an in-game leader, but I think there's enough of know-how in terms of how do you come into a tournament well prepared, how do we make sure we peak at the right moment, and then, as I said, a bit more time with Nerds together with Saw. I think that should be enough for G2 to, at the very least, not necessarily cruise through stage 2, but make it to stage 3. And that's when we get to see the big test, how are they going to fare up against the big dogs in best of 3 games? Because that's always been the issue. As you described it, they've had so many games where they got close, or where you think, okay, a couple of rounds away from beating a big team, a couple of rounds away from making the playoff, or a couple of rounds from making the semifinal right here, but they never really get it done. This would be another chance to prove that they can. And I think, I don't know why. It's purely a gut feeling, because, as you said, we haven't seen them play that much, apart from where they haven't really done too well. But I have believed that G2 have more in store for us than they've shown so far in this season. The question is how much.
By the way, on the other side, actually, you just referenced them there when they played against GamerLegion. What's funny is, even though coming into this major, Astralis has actually been pretty poor form. They've had a lot of struggles. They've actually thrown away a lot of the goodwill they'd earned, like in the middle of the season, and the roster looked like it was coming. It looked like it was heading up, and then it just sort of plateaued and went down a bit. I have to say, if I look at stage 2, though, I actually do still have them going through, mate. Like, I just think, like, if you look at the players they have, the quality. I also, by the way, I'll tell you another thing I'm learning about these majors is, because there is a lot of pressure, even in a group stage game in a major, in a way that you don't have it like a random tier 1 LAN where there's always another one next week. I do actually feel like having a good IGL is really fucking important, mate, because that is the guy that has to make some crazy call or figure out, do I have to like band-aid the game? Can I call a normal round? Like, well, mate, I actually think Huxley in this field of stage 2 is one of the better people you got as an IGL. Like, so I'm personally not that scared for Astralis. I saw some people also not putting them through. Maybe they go out. I feel like Astralis will make it, mate. I think stage 3 is where they're going to be the team that'll do fuck all and then they'll be out. So, which actually is not the end of the world. You think about Astralis, they are a team where they're not in the liquid boat, mate. This is one thing that's weird about esports. You'd think because of the legendary nature of the old team that they should be. No, but as an org, they're not. Like, they're not a giant esports org. The difference is, Pimp, they're not going to be winning the EWC. They're not barely even in any fucking games, mate. Like, they're irrelevant in most other games. And so, yes, actually, for me, I always think of this new project not as like Astralis, the old one, but as if it's like a new team. If you think of this as a new org, they're doing fine. They've done some decent pickups. They've done all right. You just want to see, how does this team go forwards? I think Astralis makes it. You got any concerns?
Not in that regard, no. I agree. I think they're going to make it as well. I had them as one of my safe picks to go through. I know the form recently, leading up to the major was a little bit subpar, but I also do know it's a team. They're Danish first and foremost, and it's a team that they got tired out by traveling too much and playing too many tournaments. And I think Huxley is, as much as I like him as an in-game leader, he also relies on having time to prepare for a tournament. So when you go back to back tournaments and you play the same strat book over and over and over, that's not the way you would like Huxley to prepare for a tournament. So the fact that they've had time to go home, reset, him and Roger have made up a new set of strats, a new set of approaching a tournament like this. I saw no reason as to why they wouldn't be successful with that. Because I agree. I think when you take all the in-game leaders in stage 2 and you line them up against each other, Huxley is definitely in the top end of that. Yeah, no doubt about it. Probably even a top 3 in that regard in terms of who I believe have the ability to make the right calls and step up in the right moments. He's also one of those in-game leaders he's not afraid of losing. Like, he's been through a lot, and he's always calling what he believes at the moment is the best thing. Where I have noticed, certain in-game leaders in big games on pressured moments, they call the safe strat, which is default, and then they rely on the players to make the right decisions, or they rely on the team to figure out a solution to win the rounds. Huxley's not afraid of taking the responsibility and calling a BWAS if he believes BWAS is the right thing to do, and then he'll also take the blame if they lose. And I would much rather have an in-game leader like that at a stage 2 and a major than someone who's more like, let's do default and let's see what happens, because that's, at the end of the day, everyone can call it default, because you kind of apply pressure to all 5 players at that point, where all 5 players have to make individual decisions. Whereas if you're Hooksy and you see a gap or you have a feeling of something, he's not afraid of making that unorthodox call. And I have faith in that. So I agree. Astralis is one of those teams I don't fear for making it to stage 3, but I also perceive them right now as a team that I almost have no chance of making it to the playoff. I feel like there's a limitation to how well they can do, which is they're very solid, but in stage 3, I'd say if they were to make it, they win a game, maybe even go 2-2, but do they come up against, a proper team in a 2-2 game, best of 3 to make the playoff? I'd probably have them losing in 9 out of 10 of those scenarios.
No, funnily enough, considering they went away from being purely Danish, that's also the pro and con of why they are on some level still a Danish team. Like, you look at the coaching staff and the structure, that the benefit of being Danish is it's a system, and the system will carry you and hold you to a level that if you're just playing Randy with 5 players, you don't get. Like, you get way more highs and lows with the other style. But the one downside is the same way, like, can keep you at a certain level. Also, I do think makes them fairly predictable, and they don't have like a crazy ceiling. So I'm with you. Even when they make it to stage 3, I don't have them making the playoffs, mate. If they made the playoffs, anyone would beat them. Every single team would beat them. So, all right, what about this? Pick another team. Is there another team, either good or bad, that you're interested in here?
It's a good question. I think we spoke about a lot of them. I think FUT, I think FUT is someone we have to talk about, and I have high expectations for them as well. I know that they also sort of like Astralis, they come off a high, they win a tournament. We're like, okay, that's your breakthrough, tier 1 Counter-Strike team. How far can you go? And then they have a couple of tournaments where it doesn't go well for them. Forced to play with the coach at a tournament, couldn't get a 17, I believe it was, or one of the players couldn't get the visa for it. Long, there you go. And then I also heard, from some of the interviews that they were then stuck in America and didn't practice with the full roster for 3 weeks.
It's why at the next tournament when Lonks came back, they were also really bad, and he was even bad as far as I know. Yeah, I heard something similar.
Exactly, and when you know, and when you see what FUT is like as a team, hyper aggressive, rely on the individuals, but in a way where there's a system. It's not like they're playing. I had a conversation with Dupree the other day where I was like, okay, it's almost like this is what I wanted Bad News Eagles to be back then. Bad News Eagles to me was a face-it team. To some extent, they were just a bunch of quote unquote brain-dead dudes running around being incredibly skilled at the game, but there was almost no effort to understand why what they were doing was working. Whereas I feel like FUT is that's the next step of that. That's what I wanted Bad News Eagles to become.
Yes.
A bunch of young, inexperienced guys who have this amazing skill and sense for the game, but then they add layers to it and add layers. And I think FUT have done that. So I'm almost willing to say, okay, we had that period, of 6 weeks sort of leading up to the major where the results tanked, where they played with the coach, where they didn't practice. Discredit that, I'll just say, okay, that was a bad period. It's whatever. They're coming into the major as well. They've had time to practice. They've had time to prepare. I saw their first game against Bait as well. By the way, Bait, we haven't really spoken about them. I think they're a great team. I think they're
severely underrated squad, at the moment. Well-built squad, yeah.
Yeah, they had a horrible start to the year, so everyone was like, okay, they suck. It's over. They can't do anything. But if you actually paid attention, the last 2 months, every single tournament, they got better and better and better. And NPL is back to his best, right? But I saw FUT, and I saw them beat them on Ancient. And I saw Krabani, do a sick call on Ancient. You're playing the T side. The scoreline was 12-11, and he decides to just call a straight up B rush. All 5 players straight up B rush. They completely annihilate their position. They win the round. They win the game, and I absolutely love that. You do that at a stage 2 at a major where 4 out of the 5 players are rookies, never played a major before, only long suspended before, and you come in and you just pull out the B rush to win the game. To me, that's a clear sign that these kids, they don't give a fuck. They're coming here to play their version of Counter-Strike. Whether that's going to be good enough to make the playoff, uncertain. I have them making stage 3, and I honestly do believe that they're one of the teams that, let's say Astralis faced them in a 2-2 game or in a best of 3. FUT, I'll pick FUT above Astralis any given day. I'll even say, a fun matchup in something like that could be a G2 versus FUT in a game like that. I'll probably even, slightly edge it towards FUT. I think they have potential to be one of the teams that can make the playoff of the major if they continue to just, not show any signs of nervousness or anything. And I didn't see that whatsoever in the first game.
No, by the way, I'm with you. Like, as people will know, they're one of the teams where as soon as they got really good and proved it at Tier 1 lands, the first thought I had was, mate, if they can play like this at the major, it's going to make it awesome. Like, this is exactly the sort of team. I'm with you. If you had to pick one inexperienced team to chuck in as your last major playoff team, this is them. Because I also believe, actually, they've got that sort of almost beginner's luck thing of like, I can't believe this is working out. Oh my God, I always dreamed of being a pro, and it's suddenly working for me. In a weird way, you want to bottle that, mate. That doesn't last that long. Eventually, that fades. and you just have to be a top pro and handle the highs and the lows and the everyday. So for now, you've got that crazy youthful energy and the style where you actually believe you can beat everyone where you play them. Like, I actually said this before, that it never really happened because they only did it with the standing. That's the sort of team I want to throw up Vitality, because everyone else is beaten down, mate. Like, Na'Vi has to, like, fucking, you know, look at themselves in the mirror and tell themselves all affirmations before they play Vitality, because they lost too many times, haven't they? And they also know how good that is. Whereas if you're something like FUT, you could just naively believe you could win that game. You're like, mate, I go to the server, I shoot the AK, I win a round. What's wrong? So, but here's the obvious, as you pointed out, there is an obvious downside there, which is they're all mega inexperienced. Bro, one of their best players, Jugs, is 17 years old. Like, mate, that can also go the other way. You can suddenly hit that moment where, like, maybe that's the first game you have a meltdown. It's in a fucking major, mate. Like, that's where it gets rough. With that said, I do still think they'll make it through. I even like the analogy, actually. I hadn't thought of that before. BNE, here's what's funny. I never hated the squad. What I hated was that they got that stupid way where you did nothing all year. You weren't a real team. You turned up like, lol, I made it through the RMR. And then even at majors, I was pointing this out, I never made the playoffs, guys. Like, they used to just fuck other people's majors up, then go home. Like, that's not cool. But the reason why they were able to do that made perfect sense if you look at their style of play. If people don't know, like, the one Flash Roll guy was a skilled player, mate. I actually watched that guy stream. I watched a bunch of his POV. He clearly was a talented player. It's much like some of the players in FUT. Their problem, like you say, is they just stayed at that, like, almost we're a super mix. You just lol, let's just turn up and do whatever we want. They never felt like they really sat at home after those majors, like, right, how do we actually make, like, the playoffs for the next major? And how can we take some of this, like, randiness, but also put, like, you know, a structure around it and then work on it? They never felt like they did that. The difference is, I'm with you. Actually, it's why, if you notice, I'll tell you an example. If you're those players out there who hates that he coach never gets any props, bro, go and look at Coolio. The style of play FUT have actually should mean we never talk about this guy. We should assume it's just like FPL players, bro, running. They even play fucking Mirage all the time and just rush in. You'd think that's the team that has no tactical style and no cut. Actually, though, if you look, there's a bit of nuance there. It does look like this is like a curated style. They didn't really just go, lol, let's just run in. Like, there's a logic to it. So I actually think, in general, I also think, actually, but I'm with you, they're making stage 3. And if they do, actually, they're one of my teams where I'm sort of hoping they're going to inject a bit of life into the playoffs and kind of make it so that, like, whoever the last team, like, the difference is, I'm with you. If the last team's to make the playoffs, I have the choice between, like, G2, Astralis, I'm taking FUT all day long, mate. Those teams, I don't believe those teams can win the major. I think FUT is crazy enough to think they can make, like, the semis or something, mate. Like, so give them a try. Let's see if they can. I'm with you.